Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this retrofit surgery with EcoCosi from Changeworks. My name is Dimo, and I'm one of the retrofit coordinators for the service. I'm joined by Mark Brammer, our senior retrofit coordinator, and together we'll be leading today's session. We'll begin with a short presentation on EcoCosi, which will give you an idea of what we do and how we support retrofit projects. The majority of the session, however, will be spent on the case studies that you bring to us today. After the presentation, we'll invite you to tell us about your property, what you're looking to achieve, and Mark and I will provide some high-level advice on what you can do and what to consider as part of the process of improving the energy efficiency of your home. Depending on demand, we may split into breakout rooms so each of us can cover more ground. If you'd like us to discuss your retrofit project, then please use the question and answer function of the webinar to provide a short description of the property and what you're hoping to achieve. You can do this at any point from now on, and we'll discuss as many cases as we can after the presentation. Before we go any further, I need to cover a bit of data protection housekeeping for today's session. By attending this webinar, you consent to us recording the session and give Changeworks permission to use the video content to present and promote our services to the wider public indefinitely. You're welcome to turn video and audio off if you wish, and you have the right to withdraw your consent at any time if you wish to do so. You can email inquiry@ecocosi.org.uk for more information. That email address will also be shown at the end of the presentation. So a little bit about who we are at Changeworks. We are Scotland's largest environmental charity. Our mission, the thing that guides us and motivates us, is to decarbonise homes in Scotland. We work with partners, housing associations, local authorities, and other government branches to drive transformation in energy efficiency and to tackle fuel poverty. A few years ago, Changeworks realized that there is a gap in the support for retrofitting privately owned homes. As you may be aware, social housing falls under increasingly ambitious legislation on energy efficiency, what is known as the EIS and EIS 2 standards. And as a general rule, these projects are large scale and involve built environment professionals with quality control of the installed measures. And I know this because a lot of these projects are managed by another team in Changeworks. For homes owned privately by people in fuel poverty, the Scottish Government provides support through their Warmer Home Scotland scheme, which follows a recognised procedure for retrofit called PASS 2035. The same is true for some UK-wide initiatives, such as the Energy Company Obligation 4 scheme and the Great British Insulation Scheme. They're also required to follow PASS 2035. However, these support mechanisms don't exist for privately owned homes where the owners are not in fuel poverty. This leaves them without a lot of support from professionals and in a situation where they have to navigate the world of retrofit mostly on their own. And here I have listed some common barriers they face. So examples of that would be lack of quality and trust, so lack of access to trusted support, knowledge and experience, acute shortages of a skilled workforce and product availability, lack of finance to finance the retrofit beyond some Scottish Government grant funding, and a limited understanding of the process of retrofit and how to avoid unintended consequences. To give you an idea of the scale of the challenge, it's estimated that about 1.5 million privately owned Scottish homes require retrofit. And when you do the maths, that equates to about retrofitting over 200 homes per day, each day over the next 20 years until 2045, when Scotland has committed to be a net zero country. So, given the scale of the challenge and the barriers to retrofit, Changeworks decided to launch EcoCosi, which is our retrofit agency. This is why EcoCosi exists, to help tackle this massive challenge of retrofitting Scottish homes and to overcome these barriers to retrofit. At this stage, I need to make you aware that we are a paid-for service. So the aspects of the service that you're about to see is something that we charge for to cover our costs. I'll pass over to Mark now, who will talk about the phase one of our support. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Timo. So as Timo mentioned, we have to retrofit a whole lot of homes, and a lot of those are not in social housing, but are privately owned, and the resources for doing so are limited. So what EcoCosi does to help people get from A to B is we work in three phases. The first is to do a deep dive survey of the house and try to model the energy use of the house based on the fabric of the house, what we see in the survey, an interview with the client themselves, so we understand like how you're using energy, what your targets are, and then we're also looking at providing information to help you make a good decision based on pricing. So what we can do is when we look at the survey, we're looking at the fabric, we look at roof, floors, walls, whether the age of the building, what kind of insulation is existing there now, windows and doors, and in particular ventilation, because that's been an issue in the past with past retrofits, where we've focused on what we call insulating the box, but we've not really focused on then dealing with the trapped moisture and heat, that stale air that ends up in there. So ventilation is a big one. Heating and hot water is obviously the big factor, and any other factors we think are going to change. Particularly how the individual within the dwelling is using the energy, that's a really big important one. Next slide, please. So what we're trying to get to, this is a basic diagram of what we're trying to determine with the model, is with each element of the fabric, the roof, the walls, the floors, when you're trying to heat to a certain temperature, what is the end result? How much heat how much energy is it required to heat the house temperature, and how quickly is that heat lost? Obviously, the less insulation you've got and the worse that the fabric is performing in this regard, the harder it is to reach temperature, and the more you need to spend to make the house more comfortable. If you look at the lower right hand, there's a peak heat load, and that's really what we look at and say, in order to have the house reach a certain temperature, this is how much energy it requires at any one time. And especially if we're going to decarbonize the heating system, let's say put in a heat pump, that's a number that we need to know. So after we've created a baseline, and we use that using the current energy bills, so that allows us to kind of say, okay, this is how the individual homeowner actually is using heat and energy within the house. This is what it costs them to keep the heat in at that temperature for the year. That allows us to do a baseline, and then we can look at various measures that improve the fabric at different parts. So let's say insulating the loft or insulating the floor, and then we can see what the results are. By isolating them, then we can see on a cost basis what is the most effective way to spend whatever budget's available to achieve a result. Next slide, please. So I'm going to hand it back to Demo. So the next phase is obviously once we have written the report and provided that to the client, we do a debrief to decide what to do. And then we can put you in touch with our network of installers. So Demo, do you want to take this through phase 2?
Yes, thank you, Mark. You remember from the beginning of the presentation that one of the big barriers that Changeworks identified was lack of trust and issues with the supply chain. So we recognized quite early on that this would be a major stumbling block to retrofit at scale in Scotland. So we were quite proactive about it. We appointed the supplier engagement team, who did a lot of research on companies that do a good job in insulation and renewables and ventilation and any other type of retrofit improvement that can be made. And then we approach these companies, and our proposition to them is that we're here for the long term. At the moment, EcoCosi is in its infancy stage, but we want to grow to be supporting tens of thousands of households every year. So our proposition is, if we send you clients and you do a good job, you communicate well, you treat them well, then we'll keep sending you more. So our focus is on a long-term relationship built on trust between both parties. We don't just leave it there, though. So our supply engagement team would ask all companies who are interested in what we offer to submit to our due diligence checks. So in other words, we make sure that they're in good financial health. We make sure that they have the right insurance. We make sure they have the required certification and training to install the measures that they've told us they can install. We ask them to sign to our code of conduct, which places the client and the client's interest at its center. And we also provide, as part of phase 2, a legal framework. So these are contracts which are drafted by our lawyers that can be used to contract the services of an installer. And again, those are written with the focus of the client, the interest of the client in mind. So if somebody decides to pay for phase two, what they get is a list of installers and the measures that they're able to offer and their contact details. At the end of phase one, we also provide what we call a tear sheet. So that's a summary of the report and the measures that one of our clients is looking to install, and that can be sent to one of these installers, and it's a process that they're well familiar with at this point. So that's where some people leave it. They feel comfortable communicating with installers, asking questions, but we recognize that in some cases that's not enough. So we provide an additional service where we can be on sort of on call, involved in the process of obtaining quotes. And that's the point of that, is to ensure that the installer quotes meet the requirement of the project. And the way we can do that is we can attend installer visits and we can ask relevant questions. We can review the quotes that a client receives and query them. So ask questions about what's covered, what's not covered, what material will be used here. And we can also do regular check-ins, regular meetings, calls with the homeowners to see how they feel about the process, maybe after each visit or after each quote is received. So by the end of phase one and phase two, we have a report that gives a list of recommendations. We've decided on what recommendations we're going ahead with. We have obtained quotes, and we're going ahead with. We've chosen one particular installer. I should also mention that these phases are not necessarily sequential. Somebody can enter and exit the service at any stage. So somebody can use EcoCosi for just phase one, for just phase two. We're about to stock phase three, or any combination thereof. So it's not a fixed route. It's a flexible in and out service. So I'll pass over to Mark now to talk about phase three, which is the final phase of our support. Over to you, Mark.
Sure, thanks, Timo. So once you've got your report, and I should mention these things they can be quite substantial, which is why we reduce it down to the tear sheet to give to installers. So we just have a very clear set of measures we want to install. We're not here to do those reports. We're here to get spade in the dirt, as it were. So phase three is really leveraging what ChangeWorks has developed in other areas. So we do a lot of work, project management with local housing associations and social housing to do retrofit in those areas. A lot of that's sort of government funded schemes that we support. And as a result, we have a very experienced quality assurance team. And the idea for EcoCosi is then to utilize that team to also do individual homes in the quality assurance process. So it's not quite project management. The homeowner would still be the project manager, but project facilitation. So we would check in with the builders, find out what the schedules are, make sure that we are timing our assessments and surveys of ongoing works at the right time. So for things like a heat pump, we probably would just come at the end, because most of the survey work that needs to be done to ensure that it's been a proper commissioning of a heat pump kind of is at the end. But something like, if you look at the middle photograph, like internal wall insulation or underfloor insulation, we want to kind of come at multiple stages to make sure that everything is done properly. And then we would provide feedback reports both to the installer and to the client, basically saying, look, this is done right, or if there's any snagging issues, we would highlight them in a list, and we have a report. So this way, you're essentially leveraging the expertise that has been developed for the social housing and the government scheme market for individual home retrofit. And I think this is, a big gap and something that's not really offered anywhere else. Next slide, please. And we've been in business now for over a year and a half now, so we have a number of clients. So we just thought we'd highlight a couple of quotes that we've got from clients that we've worked with so far. Talking about how the service came across and what the value of what we're doing and how that's changed people's experience. Next slide, please. And this is from Mike Howard, who actually was our very first client. So he was quite excited. And basically, what we've really found is that we're helping the decision-making process, and we're also speeding up that process. So the time it takes to get from deciding what to do, understanding what it is that you're doing, determining that's the right thing, and actually getting installers on site is much reduced with the EcoCosi service. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll hand it over to you, Dimo. I think that's phase 3 in a nutshell.
Thank you, Mark. Just to touch on before we start the questions and answer section, so the retrofit surgery proper, just to mention a few future plans. Our service is, as Mark mentioned, quite new and constantly evolving. So there's a couple of things that are coming up very shortly for us. So the first is we'll have a new way for clients to enter the service. So for simpler projects, we'll have an free online report that can be generated. This is coming in the next few weeks. We're hoping to have it ready in the beginning of April. So this would be where a whole home assessment is not necessarily needed, where the project is simpler, where it's maybe just 1 or 2 measures that are installed. Then we maybe don't need to see to do this very thorough assessment of the whole property, which can take it's sometimes can take up to 5 hours for us to properly do an assessment. We also have a green finance option coming in hopefully May of this year. So this is where we'll be able to connect our clients to a broker who can look at green finance options on the market. And this is over and above the funding from the Scottish Government that's currently available for retrofitting privately owned homes. And finally, as I mentioned, our ambition is to support tens of thousands of households every year. So we will be expanding. At the moment, the service is only available in Edinburgh and the Lothians, but we will hope to expand that to other territories as well, as soon as we feel that there is enough interest and also that there is a good installer network in the places that we want to expand, so we can make sure
Dimo,
that we can...
I should say we can probably at this point take on any clients within Central Belt. I think that's not a problem.
Yeah, so there is some flexibility within the service there. Yeah. Okay,